We have with us Niraj Antani, a state representative representing the 42nd House District. Representative Antani is serving his second term in the Ohio House. He represents, again, the 42nd District, which covers most of southern Montgomery County. Currently, he serves as the vice chairman of the Committee on Higher Education and Workforce Development, and as well as a member of the Committee on Health, Committee on Energy and Natural Resources, Committee on Aging and Long-Term Care, and the Committee on Community and Family Advancement. Antani was named to the Forbes magazine's list of the top 30 under 30 people in the United States for law and politics in 2015. He holds a bachelor's degree from the Ohio State University. So, Representative Antani. Also with us is Dr. Scott Palmer from Butler Tech. Dr. Palmer is the Executive Director of Adult Education at Butler Tech. He provides leadership and oversight for adult education, customizing training, and identification of new programs for adult students and the business community. Dr. Palmer has more than 20 years of experience as an administrator and instructor, has a BA from the College of Worcester, a master's degree from the National University of Ireland, the University College of Dublin, and a PhD from Ohio University. Dr. Scott Palmer. And finally, last but not least, Kevin Burch, the president and partner of Jet Express, and he's also currently the chairman of the board of the American Trucking Association, the largest national trade association for the trucking industry. Kevin has been an active member of the association since 1990. He serves on numerous ATA committees and serves as the vice chairman of the executive committee of the Trucking Moves America Forward image movement. He's a trustee of the Ohio Trucking Association, a steering committee member of the Dayton Logistics Council, and a member of the Miami Valley Transportation Club in Dayton. So with that, I'd like to welcome our speakers, and we'll kick this off with Kevin Burch.
Thank you, Mike. Use this one right here for the advanced slide. That's way in the end.
Yeah, I'll get you. There you go.
Which one do I use? This one right here? Well, good afternoon or early morning or late morning. How was everybody? Good. You know, it's typical with trucking and distributions and whatnot. I wish we'd have a little bit more sexy or glamorous issue, if you will, get more people in here. What's interesting, and we're pressed for time, but by all means, when we get done, if anybody has any questions, a lot of what I have here, I changed up these slides, if you will. I'm not going to be one of those boring people with PowerPoints, but there's a story to be told here. But, you know, trucking is very vital. How many trucking people do we actually have in the room? Will you raise your hands so we know what kind of, yeah, I got a few. Okay, well, that's good. We're going to do a little, tell our story here. Let's take a look at some statistics. I'm kind of a statistical person. If you look up there, 7.3 million people, that's a lot. 5%, we represent 5% of the gross national product. If you look up there, 1 out of 16 people in the United States work in the trucking industry. Does that surprise anybody? That's a heck of a statistic. 3.5 million are professional drivers. We drove 2.79 billion miles. That's doubled in the last 25 years. These are huge statistics that I love talking about our industry. Here's a couple more that you might want to jot down that most people don't know. 97.3% of all motor carriers have 20 trucks or less. That even surprises me. The last one, 90% of all motor carriers have 6 trucks. We think of the ones out there like the J.B. Hunts or the, the Orange Barrel, we call them, if you will, Snyder and whatnot. Look at that last statistic there. That's pretty interesting, isn't it? We hauled 10.48 billion tons of freight in 2015, and an astounding 726 billion in the industry. We represent 82% of the nation's freight bill, and that's in 2014. Folks, this is my 44th year in trucking, never missed a paycheck. And that's why I encourage the people. We've got some great speakers up here to talk about what we can do to get more people in, the training and whatnot. 44 years. It's interesting, and I'm not alone on that statistic. Let's talk about taxes and whatnot. $40 billion in federal tax and state highway tax. $40 billion. Okay, so let's break that down. 12% of the vehicles on the road, a lot of people don't realize, are trucks. And then let's break down that 40 billion. 18 billion are federal. Look at this number down here at the state highway users tax, 21 billion. 53 billion gallons of diesel. Okay, let's look at some top concerns. What I plan on doing, we've got 10 or 15 minutes each. So I've got a lot of material here I want to kind of cram in there to kind of educate you all. But afterwards, by all means, get me on my cell phone if you want, or the email. These are the top issues by ATRI, American Trucking Research. I'm sorry, guys, that you got to turn around. Let me look at some of these. These are the top 10 issues that we face in this industry. I'm not going to go through each one of them, especially if there's only a few truckers in there, but the first one is ELD, electronic logging devices. That's what that means. The bottom one here is driver distraction. We know that. Now, I've said I'm a data person. Here's what I decided to do on this slide for today's presentation. So many of us in the industry think that it's only that we don't listen to the employees or the owners don't know what's going on. If you look on the left up here, those are the commercial drivers' top 10 issues that they feel that we have issues with in our industry. On the right are the ones that are the owners of trucking companies that feel that they have a problem. So let's take a look at that real quick. ELDs, electronic logging devices, will be coming in mandated for December the 18th. Over to the right is the owners of trucking companies. Guess what? ELDs is number 2. Hours of service for drivers, number 2. For the owners of companies and management, number 5. Truck parking is the only one on the left that we've got a problem with. The drivers and the management people don't understand it. So what did the President Trump do here when he first got in? He said $1 trillion over 10 years. Even people in Washington, when you hear the word trillion, it gets their attention. So ATA, American Trucking Association, set an agenda to find some of those. I'm going to go through these rather quickly. I'm not going to go through each name. There are some pictures here we're going to go through in a little bit. How many people saw the President toot the horn? That's pretty awesome, wasn't it? We're going to show that. The people on the left on the task force, I'm fortunate to be on the American Trucking Association's infrastructure task force. We're trying to help the government, if you will. I know they're always trying to help us. We're trying to help them as far as infrastructure. The gentlemen on the left are all presidents and or owners of large trucking companies. I'm here to tell you the ones on the left represent 1 million trucks. And of that, you've got this little guy, Kevin Burch, with 220. But we've met with the president, and we're going to go into some detail on that. Trucking tells its story at the White House. This was about 6 weeks ago. Look at this, tractor trailer. The president asked us to come in and tell our story about the jobs. He likes to produce things. And what better way is to have a tractor trailer? You know, they scrub down even little envelopes that come into the White House. You can imagine what we went through to get 2 tractor trailers. And these are executives on the right that were just on that other shot, and also America's Road Team. The president went right to the drivers. He didn't come to the owners of companies. He wanted to find out where they were and what their story was. Right in the middle of it. He's a hands-on guy. I don't care if you're a D or an R or an I, it doesn't make any difference. He is our leader. Got into the truck. There's one of the drivers from Walmart, American Trucking Association. We actually got in the White House. We have never had that many people talk about trucking. The president really helped us out to get our word out. Very active. That's our CEO. There's the vice president. We had the whole team. This was the day of the Affordable Care Act. And that day he canceled, the president, the White House canceled every event but the one with the transportation people. I'm asking some questions here. Now, you talk about telling our story. Does anybody know where that might be at? The Simpsons. 2 weeks afterwards, this right here, if you will, was in one of the deals on The Simpsons in the right hand. He was in the bedroom shot. Because I'm going to show you that the president got in a truck and he's hunched over into the steering wheel like a little boy, all right? It got some excitement into this industry.
This is the first time we've ever had trucks on the lawn of the White House, so it's a very cool experience.
I've not been this close to the White House. I think it's fantastic and looking forward to it.
We represent an industry of 7.3 million employees, and we have 12 drivers here with us today and 11 CEOs to meet with the President.
So the more we tell our story, the more people know how important trucking is. It also reflects on the need for the infrastructure, and it branches out into the fuel tax issues and many other things that we need to talk about.
Healthcare with our employees is extremely important for us, but we also want to get our voice heard on the opportunity to raise the $1 trillion to help rebuild America's infrastructure.
I think he's going to be blown away by meeting the trucking industry.
Mr. President, I'm Chris Spear. I'm President and CEO of the American Trucking Association.
Mr. President, it's an honor to be here. My name is Kevin Burch. I'm president of Jet Express Trucking.
Mr. President, Dennis Nash. I'm the founder and CEO of the Keenan Advantage Group.
Mr. President, Rick McCardle with UPS, president of UPS Freight.
I'm honored to welcome all of the many truckers and the trucking industry leaders to the White House. And I must say, really, you are the leaders. No one knows America like truckers know America. You see it every day, and you see every hill, and you see every valley, and you see every pothole in our roads that have to be redone, right? But America depends on you through day and night and all kinds of weather. Truckers course the arteries of our nation's highways. You carry anything and everything, the food that stocks our shelves, the fuel that runs our cars, and the steel that builds our cities.
We're here at the White House, and the president is listening to trucking and the trucking industry, so that's big for all of us.
It was a wonderful meeting. We thank the President for giving our industry a voice. We are the backbone of the American economy. We move 70% of the domestic freight. We move 56% of the GDP in the United States. We need to put the people that move America forward first.
It's a great day to be American. It's a great day to be a trucker. I know the President will feel proud of the symbols of our industry, so it's a very special day today.
That's pretty good, isn't it? Telling our story. That's what we need to do with this industry, to get people, and we're going to have the speakers here after me talk about the opportunities in schools and whatnot. The President really helped us out. They scripted that. We didn't. We know the story. We move America's goods. We're needed. We're viable. And I-75 and 70, this is a story that we want to tell. What's interesting on that, let's look at this slide real quick. Congestion, we're going to talk about that now because of the Highway Funding Act I was talking about, the infrastructure. In the U.S., the National Highway System costs the trucking industry, listen to that statistic, $63 billion, and that's in 2015. But this is the one that I think the schools need to look at. Lost productivity due to congestion. 996 million hours. You know what that equates to? 362,000 commercial drivers sitting idle. 1 year. This could take care of all the issues that we have. But we haven't been able to do anything with the roads. A motorist loses an average of $500 and some odd through potholes and repairs. We all know what that is. 15,000 people are killed, nearly 1 million are injured when the vehicles are run off the road. These are naturally cars and trucks, but that's because it's old technology, old school, old ways of transporting goods. The last one here, and I'm sorry for speaking so quick, but there's some good data here I want you to see. 88% of the highway system in the congestion occurs on only 18% of the roads. So let's fix those 18%. And here's one I want to bring up. Here's the top 10 in 2016, the bottlenecks throughout the United States. This is a great slide here. I don't know whether you'd see some of them Atlanta naturally if they don't burn the bridges, but I mean, this is prior to that. But I'm just saying, these are the ones, and these, look at the average speed. If you're a logistics person, time is money, and you got to do it safely. And I know that people don't figure 35, 38 miles an hour. All right, so I figured, hey, I'm in Ohio, I'm in my home state. Here's where we are. I even put Dayton in there. These things are fresh. Now look at what's interesting is Cincinnati in 2015 was number 7, and now it's number 5, so it moved up 2. Interesting on there. I don't know if there's any surprises in there. Dayton at 75 and 35. Of 2015 it was 58. Now it's 50. Okay. I'm going to zip through here. Here's a graph. I know the schools are like this. Look at most of the new drivers, you know, we're talking $35,000 to $38,000. That's the first year. 45 on probably the second year when they get going. Walmart in particular is advertising now the jobs are $82,000. I'll go through this rather quickly, the driver shortage. The schools will talk about the availability or what we need, the shortage, if you will. Money and financing has a lot to do with it. But why can't we have a graduated system? Niraj is going to talk a little bit about, you know, why can't we do what we do in high school and train people during daylight hours and not at night and under a mentorship type of thing? Instead, we wait for people to be 25 years old with bad driving record, might have some other history, and it goes on and on. As you can tell, I'm very passionate about this industry. Of course, you can be after 44 years. I'm getting a little tired, but you can imagine what I was maybe 10 years ago. Autonomous vehicles, how many people have heard of that, or driverless? Man, how many saw the one on the beer where they ran beer out in Denver, I think it was Colorado, without a driver? Listen, I've been in this business long enough to know I don't want to pull up against an 80,000-pound unit with nobody in it. It's not right. I mean, when you see an airplane out there, a jet, you don't see it, nobody, you know, no pilot in there. We should get the terms right. It's not driverless, it's not, and it's a form of autonomous, but it's driver assist. And it's tough to get people involved in our industry if they think it's a dead end. It's not a dead end. It's the first mile, it's the last mile. There's a lot of opportunities there. Cybersecurity and trucking, I'll pass on that to give us a little bit more time. I think we've got one here that...
I would. All right, Indra's here to help me whip through the highs and lows of the week. Away we go. Our first high goes to the perks of being President of the United States, like getting to sit behind the wheel of a Mack truck and honk the horn. This week, President Trump welcomed members of the American Trucking Association to the White House to talk about the benefits of the ill-fated Republican health care legislation. Out in the White House driveway, Trump climbed up into the cab of a big rig and turned into every 8-year-old boy, excitedly playing with the giant steering wheel, honking the horn, and generally just loving trucks. In fact, he wore a pin that read, "I heart trucks," during the meeting afterward. And by the way, who doesn't heart trucks? This photograph of Trump loving trucks with a boyhood passion became a hot viral sensation. I still, at 41 years old, call for the horn when I go by a big rig. It's just who we are.
Oh, you still do it?
Yeah, of course.
I was when you were a kid. I'm like, okay.
I blame it on my 7-year-old son, but it's really for
Great,
me.
Willie.
That's just us. Our first...
Pretty cool, huh? It doesn't get any better than that. I've been known traveling the country with I Heart Trucks since 2008. I wear it all the time. I'm accused of wearing it too much. We've sold 30,000 of the I Heart Trucks just since we had the president. I'm going to finish up with a short clip, and then I'll be done. I'll be available later on. This really tells the story. This should raise some alertness, if you will, to what we do. That's the end of my presentation. It shows you that trucks do move America, and we've got a lot to offer. So thank you for allowing me this period of time. Absolutely.
We'll share it with everyone who attended.
Please do.
All sessions.
Thank you. All right, well, my PowerPoint's not quite as cool as Kevin's. No presidential anything here. But, well, first let me start. My name is Niraj Antani. I'm state representative for Southern Montgomery County and happy to be here, and had approached the association, wanted to come talk about a couple bills that is going through the legislature. First, let me talk about Kevin, though. You know, I think he undersold himself a little bit. I mean, being the chair of the board of a national industry association is a big, big deal. And the fact that, you know, we have someone like that here in Dayton, Ohio is a huge deal. The only other one I know about is Steve Brown of Iron Gate was the National Association of Realtors chair of their board. And so the fact that we now have Kevin for the ATA is a huge deal, particularly, you know, because Dayton is such a huge area for logistics. And so, you know, really just thankful for Kevin and my friendship. Want to talk about sort of what he talked about more on the workforce end. You know, I'm the vice chair of the Higher Education and Workforce Committee in the Ohio House of Representatives, and have taken a keen interest, particularly in areas that don't require a college degree. And one of them that affects Dayton is trucking, right? So in the 14-county Dayton region, there are nearly 2,000 open jobs that require CDL. So every month since I've gotten in office, the Ohio Department of Jobs and Family Services releases the list of open jobs. And number one on the list, month in and month out, is a job that requires a CDL, right? Now, the vast majority of those are truckers, but yes, school bus drivers and RTA drivers, et cetera, you know, are also included in that. So, you know, in addition to that, we need a skilled workforce to retain, attract, and expand logistics jobs in the Dayton region. We have a huge FedEx facility going up in Miami Township, literally the next lot over from where I live. And if we're going to keep that up and become the logistics capital, you know, through the artery of I-70, 75, we need to have the workforce, right? And if we're going to continue to attract and to expand, you know, these logistics companies, warehousing, distributing, and yet manufacturing, you know, et cetera, filling this job gap is, you know, critical. And I call it a crisis. I say that, you know, the trucking workforce is in crisis in Ohio, probably in the country, but particularly in Ohio. It affects the whole supply chain. I have been quoted in the paper saying that everything touches a truck. And a constituent of mine called me very angry and said, "You're wrong. Things go on trains and planes." And I said, "Well, ma'am, you're right. And I'm an advocate of our, you know, airline industry and rail industry. But I said, what happens when the plane gets to the airport and the train gets to the depot? How does the good get from there to the store?" And she's like, "A truck, I guess." And I'm like, "Yeah." So everything does touch a truck. And so, you know, look, and I think that, you know, Kevin talked more better about it than I did about, okay, what's the dollar and cents effect, you know, on different industries. And it truly affects the whole supply chain. Last thing I'd say is Dayton should be the logistics capital of the United States, right? I-70, 75 is a great asset. But if we're going to do that, we have to solve this trucking crisis. So, came into office 2 years ago, you know, had a bunch of ideas of what I wanted to work on and you know, knew I was interested in higher education workforce and had ideas and then realized how big of a problem this trucking workforce issue was, that it's probably our biggest, right? Trucking and nursing are the two biggest workforce issues in Ohio. And I said, okay, well, let me think about some ideas. And came up with some ideas through talking to some people, and we'll get to that. And I said, look, all right, so if we're going to do this, we need to put forward an affirmative plan to solve things. In government, we play defense a lot, right? People sponsor bills, and we try to kill them because they're bad for certain industries, et cetera, et cetera. Rarely do we get to try to affirmatively solve problems that don't require necessarily, a huge funding mechanism, et cetera. So I started working on this about a year and a half ago, and just about a month or two ago, we got a package of 4 bills introduced to solve the trucking crisis in Ohio. So the first one came because I was talking to the president of Southern State Community College, who has a trucking school. And, I told him, hey, I'm interested. I'd like to, learn more about your trucking school and how it works and what the process is. He said, Niraj, right away, Niraj, the biggest issue is that when people call, 8 in 10 people who call hang up the phone when they find out there's no financial aid. And I said, what do you mean there's no financial aid? He said, there's no financial aid. You can't get financial aid. There are no scholarships. And so, if we can get scholarships for trucking school, he thinks it would make a big difference. So we have introduced a bill that is a $5 million in scholarships and loans for CDL students, and we're trying to get it in the state budget. This would be a $6,000 a person loan. Half of it's $6,000 a person scholarship. Half is a grant. Half is a loan. And this could, I think, have a dramatic impact of helping people who can't afford that $6,000. And remember, these are people who are 25 years old, because that's when they can get insured, and we're going to talk about that. And so, how are they supposed to now just turn around and afford $6,000? I tell people, look, I'm a political science major, right? I had a full ride to college, right? And look what I'm doing now. I'm a 2-bit politician, right? But for hardworking people who want to become truckers, we give no financial aid. And so the first bill that we're going to do, hopefully will solve that. Second bill, and this one will be sponsored by me. Right now in Ohio, right now in the United States, the federal government says you have to be 21 or over to cross state lines in a truck, okay, in order to get your CDL. That's fine and well. Well, unless you, in addition to that, an insurance company, though, unless you're 25, won't insure you, right? And what I've learned is that, let's say if you've got 100 trucks, and Kevin can correct me, let's say you've got 100 trucks in your company, maybe 4 or 5 of them the insurance company will insure between 21 and 24, okay? That's not a lot. In addition to that, I was talking to Jerry Parisi of iSupply right off 675, and he said, Niraj, he said, why isn't it possible for an 18, 19, or 20-year-old to drive in-state? He said, I've got a bunch of hauls that are just in Ohio, right? Dayton to Columbus, Dayton to Cincinnati, Dayton to Cleveland. Why can't an 18, 19, or 20-year-old do that? And I said, Jerry, that's a great question. I have no idea. So I found out. Well, it turns out they can, but insurance company won't insure them, right? And so this bill, and what we're looking at a whole bunch of different options that I won't get into, but basically what we'll say is, okay, if we limit their driving hours and we limit what time of day they drive at, which turns out actually driving at night when there's less traffic is better than driving in the day. If we say that, it's a provisional CDL, if we increase the amount of training for a younger driver needed, et cetera, can we get the risk for these property and casualty insurance companies down? And if the state backs catastrophic insurance or puts a high-risk pool into place, will it make it better? So we're meeting with all these, property casualty and also auto, insurance companies. I have a meeting with Nationwide next week on how to do this and to see if we can make this a reality. Because then you can create a pipeline, right? Right now, I'm 26, right? No 25-year-old, very few are going to turn around and just start a new career, right? Very, very difficult to recruit someone, right? Think of, all the colleges that put tables up at lunch in high school, right, of your kids' high schools, or the military. You want to recruit them right out of high school, and you want to create that career pathway into a career. Well, trucking right now has no ability to do that, right? So if we create this provisional CDL and make it possible for an 18 to 20-year-old to drive intrastate and then a 21 to 24-year-old to get insured provisionally to drive, let's say, a 300-mile radius or whatever federally, then we can create that pool, and then Kevin can start setting up shop in high schools and career centers and to start recruiting, in those places. So that's bill number 2. Bill number 3, we want to make it easier for a truck driver in the military to obtain a CDL. The governor likes to say that if you were a truck driver in Kandahar, you should be able to be a truck driver in Canton, right? And so there's another bill that is working on making that licensure process easier for someone in the military. The 4th bill that I didn't put on here because it's a little newer is a tax credit to companies for incumbent training, right? So to help incumbent workers in the trucking industry get more training. The last issue I'll talk about is more comprehensive and not necessarily, I think the first 3 ideas can have a direct effect, right? My goal is when that Jobs and Family Services number comes out, I want to see it go from 2,000 to 1,500 to 1,000 to 500 to 0, right? That's the goal for that 14 county data region and across the state. And I think the first 3 ideas we have can really move the dial on that. All 3 of those have been introduced. They're being under consideration. We're hoping to get those done. We're working hand in hand with the Ohio Trucking Association, which is the state affiliate of the ATA. The last idea, so, and this is more for everything, right? This is for even not just for trucking, but for logistics and distribution and everything, right? We need comprehensive reform for high school guidance counselors. Right now, and I have a lot of respect for high school guidance counselors. They're overworked, but they all have master's degrees, right? And so a lot of them probably don't know how to become a trucker, right? They probably don't know how to become a plumber. They probably don't know how to go into logistics, right? And so when a student comes to them and says, well, I just don't know that, going to a university is for me, I'm interested in trucking. These guidance counselors need to be equipped with the knowledge, to say you can go to Butler Tech, or you can go to Southern State, or you can go to Clark State, et cetera, et cetera. And so, I am working on a bill and have been working on a bill to comprehensively redo how we train high school guidance counselors in school, how we deal with them in high schools, what their continuing education looks like, on getting them educated on in-demand jobs, on ensuring that high school guidance counselors see in-need students more than just once a year to schedule, okay, so that they can have that conversation, in ensuring that high school guidance counselors, look, right now the way that I see it, and going back to when I was in, I talked to, I have high school kids come knock on doors for me and everything, and I talk to them, and I say, hey, when do you see your guidance counselor? They say, well, we see them once a year to schedule. And I say, well, do they ever ask you what you're doing after school? They say, yeah, they do. And I say, well, what do they say? They say, well, are you going to college? And if you're going to college, they help you with your essay. They help you with your transcript, et cetera. If you're not going to UC or Ohio State or Wright State, they say good luck, right? And it's the opposite, right? I don't know of a single, fellow graduate of mine high school class of 2009 that went to university that's hungry and homeless, right? I do know those that weren't. And so, the guidance counselors, for understandable reasons, are helping those who don't need the help. And the ones that do need the help, that could get directed into trucking school, right, that could get directed into automotive technician or what have you, they're the ones who don't need, they're the ones that don't get the help. And so we're trying to work on a comprehensive reform for them. So the last thing I'll say is that, policy is throwing darts at a dartboard. I think Kevin listed, 50 issues up there that just their industry is looking at federally and at the state level. And some of this is, we just got to come up with solutions. So, if any of you have potential solutions to this problem or others, I'm all ears. So, and I think we're going to do questions later. And so that will conclude my presentation. Thank you very much.
Now I have to follow that. Well, good morning. It's an honor to be here. Thank you for attending this session. I wanted to start off with a personal story. And then I wanted to offer an overview of what we do at Butler Tech, and then also talk about a very unique partnership that we have here in Dayton. I grew up in a household where mom taught piano and dad is a law professor. I was told growing up that in order to be successful, I had to go to college. I'm from Columbus area, Delaware County, which is one county north of Columbus. And back in the day, they had this school called the Delaware Joint Vocational School. It was a trade school. And so throughout Ohio, these are pretty common. Miami Valley, Butler Tech. Over the past 15 years, all of these schools have been rebranded, and America has finally woken up and recognized that these schools offer value and these schools can change lives pretty quickly. So I went on to college, went on for 10 years of graduate school, spent about 15 years, 20 years working at a college, and finally I saw the light and had an opportunity to work at a career center. I love college. There's nothing wrong with college. Sinclair's a terrific college, okay? But these career centers are really doing something special. Read a book a number of years ago by Matthew Crawford. Matthew Crawford is a political philosopher. He went on for PhD school, the whole 9 yards, went to work for a think tank in Washington, walked away and opened up a motorcycle shop. Felt more at home working on motorcycles than working in politics. No offense.
It's okay.
So in this book, Shop Class is Soulcraft, he has a really great quote which sort of is critical for what we do at Butler Tech. He says, when the point of education becomes the production of credentials rather than the cultivation of knowledge, it forfeits the motive recognized by Aristotle, that all human beings, by nature, desire to know. You don't have to go to college to be successful. We have programs at Butler Tech for adult education, less than 11 months, can transform somebody's life. We've already been through the statistics. You're well familiar with that. I love the video of President Trump in the truck. I love The Simpsons. The message about high school guidance counselors is spot on. Guidance counselors will work with kids who want to go to college. Those who don't are largely forgotten about. Those who don't are the kids who I talk to every day who aren't sure what they want to do and who take a leap of faith and come to our school. At Butler Tech, we're in Hamilton. Our high school serves 14,000 students every day in Hamilton and Butler counties. We have adult education programs that offer short-term certificates in public safety, in healthcare, and in manufacturing training. We also have a CDL program. We offer CDL training in 5 weeks. And about a year ago, my colleague, highly esteemed colleague, Frank Monifo, and I were fortunate enough to connect with some great people here in Montgomery County. The result of this is a terrific partnership, which I'll talk to you about in a minute, of us offering CDL training in downtown Dayton on Germantown Road. So we have a program that's 5 weeks long. We serve nonviolent offenders. Somebody has to go to prison, comes out, didn't commit a sex crime or didn't commit murder, we can serve them. And by the way, they can get jobs. We are very proud of our statistics. 94% of people who start at our school for CDL training finish. 100% of those walk out with a CDL license. We don't give up on people. And at this snapshot in time, 87% are employed in the field. There are challenges of this, though. I won't lie to you. There are challenges in encouraging people to consider trucking as a career. There are a lot of misperceptions about trucking. A common question I have quite a bit is, I don't want to be a long-haul carrier. And I have to explain, there are options where you can be at home each night. There's a huge challenge of work ethic. Students who we serve don't have dignity. They don't have dignity that comes through hard work. They don't have confidence. So we work with them on that. Finally, there's a lot of cost associated, personnel cost and equipment cost associated with running a CDL program. However, that can be effectively managed. As I mentioned, about a year ago, as an adult ed person, I'll tell you, this is the finest partnership I've ever been a part of or have seen. Montgomery County Economic Development, we work with Central State and the Food Bank in Dayton. We offer classes, 40 hours of instruction at a classroom at Central State. And across the street, we have a driving pad at the Food Bank. Montgomery County Economic Development and the commissioners were kind enough to work with us and to help us launch this program. And we started 2 months ago, and in the Dayton region, we've trained 12 people in 2 months, which is not a lot, but we're anticipating great things in our second year in Dayton. This is our classroom at Central State. Central State has been a terrific partner. We pay them rent, and they allocate us this space. And we teach small classes. We cap the class at 12, okay? And then this is the driving pad, a little fuzzy picture, but the driving pad in the backyard of the food bank. We pay the food bank $500 a month rent for the use of this pad, and that money is able to feed tens of thousands of people meals on an annual basis. That concludes my presentation. I thank you for your interest, and I guess we're capable of moving on to the panel discussion at this time.
All right, thank you to all three of our presenters. I've got some canned questions for the panel, but if there are questions from the audience, I want to give respect to those first. So are there any questions? Right, yes.
Kevin, as you said, it's driver-assisted trucks. It's not driverless trucks. The MVRPC is forecasting a doubling in freight tonnage in trucks in the Miami Valley by 2040. So in my mind, that's twice as many truck drivers that we need. And so keep up the good work. I think we still need bodies in the seats. If you want to learn more about this, at our booth we have a freight profile that was recently released. Hopefully everybody stopped by and gets that. It's also on our website. But please, we brought 40 copies. I want to make sure this group gets copies. Thank you.
Thank you. So kind of touching on that a little bit, Kevin, did you want to say anything? Just
a quick follow-up. I mentioned ELDs earlier, electronic logging devices. Those are the black boxes that will be effective December the 18th. We're going to need more drivers to handle the same amount of freight, period. So moving forward, we estimate that we as an industry need 1 million truck drivers, professional men and women, in the next 10 years. It's actually going to be probably a little bit more of that. We are an aging workforce, plus the new regulations will make the opportunities. These schools should be humming. And we're in a tough place. I mean, I mentioned 44 years. A few more years from now, I won't be doing this anymore. I'll still be concerned with it. But I'm here to tell you, this is a very, very serious economic problem. So I'm glad that you made that comment. But somebody's got to deliver America's goods. I mean, sustainability, we have it. Also, security-wise, I mean, it's a lot of things. It's estimated to only take 5 to 6 days without trucks for the total economy to shut down. It's a serious problem.
Well, picking up on that, actually, you know, we've heard kind of in each of your presentations about kind of the challenge with attracting workforce. If there was one thing that we as the development community could help you to raise awareness about the trucking industry, what would that be?
Well, the issue was brought up about funding. These programs are not cheap. It's $4,800 for a 5-week program. Federal regulations on Pell loans have a basement of 600 hours. These programs are 200 hours. somehow, and it sounds like great work is being done in Columbus and Washington on this, to change the mindset that these short-term programs are fund eligible.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. You know, the federal issue we didn't really talk about, which is interesting. So federal Pell makes a difference. We're just trying to do it at the state level, but the federal Pell would make a difference. I will say that and it's a completely different mindset, right? That right now, both at the federal and state level, we give scholarships for college, and for some reason, a CDL or an automotive technician, program just isn't seen as that. And in fact, I'm trying to remember, all day I've been thinking about who this person was. I got in a huge argument, almost a yelling match with someone who said, why do you want scholarships for CDLs? It's not school, right? It's another driver's license. And they said, would you give scholarships for a driver's license, a regular driver's license for that driving school? And I literally hit the ceiling. And I'm sure Kevin would be more mad than I would. And I think I got to the point where I couldn't even express myself, so I just walked away. But it's a societal change in mentality of what should we be doing. So I will say that I was able to get $5 million in the state budget for scholarships for all short-term certificates. Now, hopefully, the Department of Higher Education will determine that trucking qualifies for that, but that will get gobbled up very, very quickly. Now, I think that we should put our money to the most in demand, of which trucking is number one. But that's the first time in the history of Ohio that we know of my amendment that is going to have any dollars for short-term certificates, right? And that's a huge deal, and that needs to be done at the federal level too. The other thing at the federal level that we didn't talk about is that there is a federal bill that Kevin knows more details than I do about, that would allow a 18, 19, 20-year-old to drive in a 300-mile radius, right? So that Cincinnati could go to Indianapolis and go to Kentucky, et cetera, et cetera. Now, even if that bill goes forward, there's still the insurance issue. And so until we solve this insurance issue, I see that bill almost as a moot point. But, as far as the development community, I mean, I hate to say it, but awareness does matter, right? I believe that we have to make substantive policy changes, but breaking down societal stigmas matter, right? And I tell people, I say, look, we do all these manufacturing days and everything and career days with students. We really need to be doing them with moms, okay? And I have an idea that I want, and I've talked to different organizations about this, but I want to do a monthly segment on living Dayton about an in-demand job, right? And to show how good these careers are, whether it's in trucking or logistics, to break down that societal stigma. I mean, there are, there's a trucking company called, what's the one in Arizona, Swift, that their truckers, their starting salary is more than I make, right? And so, these are very, very good jobs, and so the societal stigma, though, is very, very prevalent.
Yeah, I will say, we're lucky to have a politician that cares at a young age, too, and I can't say enough that for all that you've done at such a young age, and now getting involved with the sustainability of our industry, of our economy, and getting the word out. I applaud you for all your efforts. Not one bill, but two. You just announced four that you've been involved in. Do we have one more minute?
Yes, absolutely. Go ahead.
I think this would be appropriate to tell a short story. About 10, 12 years ago, I was asked by a high school to, we're going to have career day. It won't matter what area it is. I wouldn't do that. But in saying that, I got all prepared. I remember it like it was yesterday. I got the truck all polished. I want to make sure the driver was one of our better drivers. We all have good drivers. And the truck and the cab were all polished. About 2 weeks prior to that, the principal called and said, Mr. Burch, and I figured, well, we're just double checking. He kind of hesitated and said, I've got to tell you something here. The committee got a hold of me yesterday, and we're going to have to reschedule. And I said, reschedule? Why? Is there a problem with it? He says, well, a couple of the parents and whatnot, when they found out that we were having tool and die and we were having trucking people in there, they said that they didn't think that was a good idea, that they were going to focus on financial services and health care. I about came unglued. That was 12, 13 years ago. It still gets the fire in my belly when I hear that. And anyways, to make a long story short on that, my neighbor has got a 30-year-old that was about that time frame that went through schools, got $60,000 in school loans, that's living back at his mom and dad's house in Springboro, down the street from me, because he was, and both parents are great people. They said, well, my son, he's got all these bills, he can't pay for them, the school loans, but he is so into one area in his education, he can't find a job. You know, if he would have gotten into trucking, he'd probably be an entrepreneur now and have maybe not even been driving a truck, but own your own truck, and not own one, but own two or three. You know, and when I said it earlier, 7 million people, it's not just the truck drivers. We haven't even talked about the technicians. And that's a huge, I mean, we could go down that whole road too. As my journey as chairman of the board of American Trucking Association, I have 5 more months to tell the story. The story's got to be told, what the 3 of us have said today, and Michael, thanks for having us here. We are at a crossroads, not just because we're at 70 and 75. We are at a crossroads for this economy to move forward and how to get it there, and guess what? Get it there safely. We haven't even talked about that. Our safety record's better today than it was 40 years ago. Thank you.